But today we are exploring careers using LinkedIn and CareerShift, two great resources to use at the same time. I'm Dr. Joseph Barber. I lead one of the teams here at Career Services. My team only works with graduate students and postdocs. So what I've been trying to do and what we'll be doing for this whole week is focusing in on topics that are particularly relevant to graduate students and postdocs. Some things are transferable across all degrees. Some things are more specific to the graduate population and postdocs in terms of the resources. Career exploration, I think, is uniform. So certainly there's not too much different in terms of what that looks like. As a reminder, this isn't going to answer all your questions, but hopefully it will give you some next steps as part of your own career exploration. It will certainly give you resources and access to those resources that you might not have been using to their fullest extent. So that's a great outcome of this. And do please consider this as a way to trigger you to reach out to an advisor at Career Services and schedule an appointment. We can be busy sometimes. We do serve a very large population of students. So sometimes you do need to find an appointment by checking back on Handshake and seeing what's going on there. We do have drop-in hours usually every day that you can schedule. These are brief 15-minute sessions. So keep an eye out for those as well. Okay, so LinkedIn is great for many reasons, right? It's a big jobs board, but one of the best tools on it, I think, is the Alumni tool, because this is accessible to everyone and is up to date and is a wonderful way to see what people are doing with different degrees that are out there. So straight away, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to jump over to LinkedIn and get rid of my job board here. So from LinkedIn, what you want to do to get to the Alumni tool is to go to the University of Pennsylvania school page, right? So I type in Penn at the top. I already typed it in, so I just clicked on my link that was there. It takes me straight to the University of Pennsylvania. This is where you can gain access to the Alumni tool here. So I'm going to jump into this in just a second. I'm not sure how LinkedIn groups together populations of students in the way that they do. This is not a Penn-specific tool. This is LinkedIn. So, for example, you can find that there's a Wharton page as well, the Wharton School, even though the Wharton School is part of Penn. I don't know how much these categories overlap in terms of the alumni, because it's hard to figure that out. But you don't have to go to Wharton to look through their alumni sort of database here on LinkedIn, right? It's not like the actual Wharton database where they have their networking contacts. It's really available to you. So I'm going to go back to the Penn one because this is our broader category right here. I'm going to click on alumni here in the middle part of the page, and that's going to take me to the today 182,000 alumni and current students. And the reason that these people have been grouped together is because LinkedIn found that in their education section, they mentioned University of Pennsylvania as an undergraduate, a master's, sometimes as a postdoc, as a PhD, sometimes as a certificate student. There's a lot of diversity there. But this is a great starting point to begin to explore the alumni network out there and begin to see what people are doing in the different sort of professional realms that they're in, the different industries that they're in as part of your exploration. Now, there are 6 columns of information here that are really helpful, right? The first one is where they live geographically, which is usually where they work. So if you want to explore career options in a certain geographical area, that's where you can begin to narrow that down. These are all filterable columns. Where they work, obviously Google is a big hirer right now of Penn graduates, so lots of people there. But the University of Pennsylvania one will include a lot of students who will list University of Pennsylvania as sort of their employer because they're a student. But you can see that the top employers here. The next column is what they do, so the role that they play. So if you're interested in consulting or engineering or research, you can narrow down the employers by that category. What they studied, we talked about this in an earlier session. These don't map exactly onto your program or your degree necessarily, but you can usually find ones that are common to your program, right? So I can add in here anyone that I want. I can do psychology and narrow that down. So what do we have? 12,000 people with a psychology background. Could be undergraduate, could be master's, could be PhD, could be postdoc. Doesn't really matter, but that's going to give you a sense of what's going on there. So with all of this, what they studied, you can certainly narrow it down by anything. Just type it into the ad or click on it here if you can find yours in the top section here. So a really great way of immediately narrowing down this pool to see what other people are doing and what's going on. So what they studied is the 4th column. What they're skilled at is a great one. So this is a wonderful way of exploring. I have a skill, I wonder what people are using that skill for, right? So whether it's a technical skill like Python, or whether it's a GIS skill or ethnography or whatever skill that you think you might have, you can, again, search for this here, see if people have it, and then figure out what they're doing with that skill. Now, they may not be using that skill. It could be an academic skill that they are no longer using in their professional world, or it could be an academic skill that they really are using. And that's part of the exploration process, is to see what that actually looks like. So that's a great thing to do as well. And then the last column is how you're connected, and we'll sort of be coming back to that as well. On top of those filters that you can add here, there's also a general keyword search. So again, in the last session, we talked about breaking yourself down into keywords based on your self-assessment. You can begin to throw that keyword out there in any way that you like, right? So chicken as an example. That's relevant to me, and there's 185 people with a chicken background. Apparently, most of them work at JP Morgan, which would be interesting. So, my goal next is to say, well, wait a minute, how does chicken play into this? And then you go down this long path of exploring how people have used their chicken backgrounds to do exciting things. Now, chickens and finance may not be directly connected, but you don't know until you explore, right? So, or if nothing else, it's a way to start a conversation with someone that you share an interest with, who may have insight into a career field that is totally separate from chickens, but that you might be interested in. So if we were to take any sort of employer, we can look at the alumni who are there, right? So if we were to take a Google as an example, we can see then that there's 1,000 alumni working there, and if I scroll down, these are the people that represent that 1,000. Let me take this question quickly. Do Penn postdocs have access to LinkedIn Premium? I've been using LinkedIn Learning as a Penn resource. So LinkedIn Premium is certainly something that anyone can pay for. I have to pay for it through my work here because the searches that I do are so far ranging when I'm working with students that I get locked out from doing too many searches because LinkedIn doesn't know if I'm a recruiter or someone who's hiring, someone who's looking for a job, or they don't know who I am. Your access to the LinkedIn Learning aspect of LinkedIn will probably end if you're a postdoc once you graduate. In fact, it may actually end even if you're a Penn alum once you graduate. So the LinkedIn Learning is sort of a separate aspect of LinkedIn that you can access while you're here. LinkedIn Premium obviously is something that just each individual will have to decide if they want to pay for. Everything that I'm showing you today does not require a subscription, right? Everything I'm showing you is free, and so it doesn't then need you to pay any more money. I would encourage you not to give LinkedIn money if you can avoid it, because there are other ways of gaining access to the things that you need to be helpful to you. So here are the Google, the Google people that I was talking about. So these are 1,000 people, Penn alumni, working at Google. I can see geographically where they're based, right? So if I'm interested in the United Kingdom, I can go back there. I can see the backgrounds that they come from in terms of their, how they got to where they are. And I can also see, how I'm connected, right? So I don't have any first degree connections at Google, but I have 154 secondary connections. And this is important because this is a great way of starting a conversation with someone, because I know someone in common, right? So here are my secondary connections. They're all different types of roles that are out there. But in each case, I'm connected to someone on LinkedIn who knows this person, or at least who's connected with that person. And so if I wanted to start a conversation with Rebecca, I have two people I can go through to figure out how to do that, right? So Ophelia and Maylin, I can reach out to them and say, hey, I see that you're connected to Rebecca. I'd love to be able to start a conversation with Rebecca because of X. Again, that's a networking, that's directly jumping into the networking side of things. First of all, I'd obviously want to look at Rebecca's background and understand some of the paths that they took to get to where they are, and then decide if I have specific questions that are related to Rebecca that I might be able to reach out to. I don't want to jump to the networking without having done my background research first. So that's a really sort of great way of just sort of, again, finding an organization that you might be interested in and saying, well, who's a Penn alum there and what information do they have, right? So if I look at all these profiles here, I can begin to look at the skills that they say they have and the experiences that they say they have, and I can look to see whether there are opportunities for me to sort of gain those skills or see if those skills are of interest to me. So if I take another approach, right? So we'll stick with Google here, and rather than doing an alumni search, what I can do is I can go and search for an organization, right? So we'll do Google up here. That takes me to the company page. Very much like the school page, there is a similar type of database that you can use that matches many of the same columns, right? So here's the Google page. I'm going to click on people here. Now that's going to show me all of the employees, the 251, almost 252,000 employees, broken down by the same columns, right? Where they live geographically, rather than where they work, is now where they study. So I can find Penn here, but that would tell me what I just knew from before, because we were looking at it from the other way around. What they do and what they studied, right? So I can see if I have a particular background, I could say, well, what are people with psychology doing at Google, right? And that's a great way of sort of breaking it down from that perspective as well. So I can begin to see, are there particular types of roles with my background that might be a good fit for this organization out there, right? So you can take a degree and can see what that looks like at an organization. Even though these people may have come from different organizations, they still share something in common with you in terms of that academic background. I can also look for job function, right? And this might be helpful as part of your process, not necessarily immediately, but certainly at some point where, if I click on human resources as an example, I can look for people who might have a certain type of background. So human resources usually has the talent acquisition and the recruiter people in there. So if I use my keyword recruiter here, I can find that there are 3,000 recruiters at Google, right? So here they are right now, different roles. I can then also search by, obviously, institution. Maybe there are some recruiters there who have a specific connection to Penn that will be closer to my conversation. So 9 people in human resources from the University of Pennsylvania with a recruiter title in these places, and here are those 9 people, right? So if nothing else, you share an institutional connection with these people. Again, reach out to recruiters isn't something you necessarily want to do as part of the exploration process, but you might build to that relationship where you can reach out to people. They may have engagements with people at university. They may come to university to do info sessions or career fairs, so you may have opportunities to connect with them there. But that's a really great way of beginning to break down different types of people out there that might be valuable to you as part of your exploration. Let's clear all this out then, and then do another type of, we'll stick with Google since we're here. Let's do a skill search, right? So I talked about how valuable this is. Once you've figured out what your skills are and your interests and your areas, you can certainly do some of this as well, right? So if the skill that I have, I'm a social scientist, let's say, and I do ethnography. There we go. So the question I'm basically asking here is, who with a background doing ethnography works at Google? And then the next question is, what do they do at Google that might use that experience, right? So I have 512 people here. If I wanted to, I can narrow it down by degree. So maybe I'm an anthropologist. Anthropology researchers do a lot of ethnographic research. There's 53 people here. That gives me something tangible and easy to search through. So I can scroll down here and see we have a researcher, user experience, right? So we get a sense of how ethnographic background might be applicable to a UX type role at Google. Sometimes you can get a sense of where these people are working, the types of role that they have by looking through what their job titles are. This person works with kids and families as part of the YouTube aspect, right? So if that's of an interest to you in terms of your own research, that person might have something valuable to share with you as part of that process. Now I can also, again, narrow this down by my connections, right? So I have 9 secondary connections. If I was someone with an ethnographic background and an ethnography background, and I wanted to speak to someone at Google who did this, then my secondary connections would make that much easier to do, right? So I can see then, these are the people, I have a connection with all these people. Let's take Chris here. Chris is a UX researcher, obviously a Penn background, because that's where we are. PhD in anthropology, graduated in 2015, was an adjunct for a while, and then jumped into another UX research position, and now is at Google, right? So this whole career journey here can be informative to you to see how people have positioned themselves and created new experiences for themselves. And so asking Chris about how he navigated that and what skills he built along the way and what that looked like, that could be a wonderful way of making sure that you are taking the best practices that he gained and applying them to your own search, or avoiding some of the pitfalls that he experienced when doing that as part of your own exploration. Since we're here, and since I'm always interested to know where the chicken people are in the world or the animal behavior people are in the world, if we clear these filters, and we'll go back to the skill section, and we'll do, not chicken, very specific, but we'll do animal behavior, right? So that's my background. 20 employers at Google with animal behavior, and I can look through his JSON, quantitative researcher, undergraduate in biology from 2004, did let's see what it did. Research on behavior, neural activity, and now is quantitative user experience researcher at Google, right? So even a random sort of keyword like animal behavior can bring me to a connection who actually has not only a subject area in common, but a pen experience in common as well. Remember, I wasn't on the alumni page here. I was just looking at the Google employers at that point in time. So this is, again, an underutilized resource. Usually in appointments, when I show people this, they haven't found this on them by themselves yet. So I encourage you to play around with this. It's sort of endless fun, slicing and dicing through the different alumni networks that you're part of. You can do it for any school. You don't have to have gone there. I'm not a Penn alum myself, but I can still do it for Penn. You can do it with your undergraduate institution. So much to play around with there that's going to be helpful. The next tool that I want to focus on then, so jumping off of LinkedIn, is the CareerShift tool, right? The way to get to CareerShift, I would go to the Career Services website. In the top toolbar up here, you can put in CareerShift and do a search for that. That's going to take you to the resource page. Now, this is a tool that doesn't have the same sort of reputation as LinkedIn. And so, again, it probably isn't something that's been on your radar to play around with. So I'm going to click on CareerShift here. That's going to take me to the resource page. This is our online subscriptions page. These are things that we subscribe to as an office so that you get for free. So I'm going to go to CareerShift. You can set up your free account here. I've already logged into mine, so this is what it looks like. The first thing I'm going to do, because I'm going to skip through this at speed, is I'm going to point to the help section here, because there's a whole bunch of tutorials on how to make the most of this platform. It does more than I'm going to show you. You can see here there's lots of different approaches that you can take with it. But I'm going to focus on one aspect of it, because as part of your career exploration, one of the questions that people often have is, what are the organizations within an industry? What are they called? What are they? Where's a list of organizations that do X? Or where's a list of organizations that do X in this location? And CareerShift is a wonderful tool to give you that access. Even LinkedIn won't tell you, who the other organizations are. If I click on Google, there's no list of organizations like Google that I can scroll through. But the industry search that you can do on CareerShift is a really great approach to take. So to do this, I'm going to go to companies here, and I'm going to click on search, right? And that's going to allow me to search through the database that's out there. So the industry categories, they're very specific to each tool that you come across. So you can explore this on your own and figure out which industry you might be interested to explore. I'm just going to look for, just for the funsies of it, translation and linguistic services. So valuing people with a sort of a language background. Then I'm going to do a location search. I'm going to do, well, how about in the Pennsylvania area? Just to sort of narrow down our search there. And then I'm going to search for that. I'm going to see what types of organizations pop up here. So I can see up here, there's 105 companies that sort of fall under this category in this industry. You can see the nature of these organizations. Some of these are translation services, proofreading services, right? Lots of organizations that you can then say, oh, I've never heard of this organization before. Things that you can take from this, you can add to your Excel spreadsheet, so you're not missing out on those opportunities to sort of capture those organizations. You can split them into your different tabs to have those that are out there. If I was interested in organizations, I can that I have a specific language focus. Obviously, I can do a keyword search within this 105, right? So we'll put Japanese in here, and there are 2 companies here that jump out that may have a specialized focus on this as a language area. If I get rid of the Pennsylvania sort of area here, so we'll move this and do another search. Obviously, that expands my horizons. Now there are 145 companies that in the language and translation field that value Japanese in some way because it's in their profile section. Different languages you can throw in there. So if I wanted to do Arabic, we could throw that in there and see what companies come out here. So we'll do a search for this one. So 110 companies here. Now, maybe I don't want to work for an organization that only has a couple of people. Maybe I want to have more, an organization that's larger because there may be more opportunities there. I can do an advanced search here that gives me more criteria to look for. So I can do minimum company size. So I want a minimum company size of 100 people, and I can search for that. It's going to narrow down to a smaller number of companies, but if that's the type of organization that you're interested in, obviously that's going to give you a better perspective about which organizations are out there and what you can do with those. So again, that's just an example, one industry that's sort of narrowed down by keyword, by location, or by size. You now have a list of organizations that you can explore further on their website, on LinkedIn, and there's more stuff that you can do here as well, which I'll show you in just a second. So let's change industry now, just to play around with another one. So let's do museums and galleries. It's always a fun one. We'll do that in the New York area. Lots of stuff going on in New York in this field. So we'll do a search here and see what we come up with. 4,664 companies. That's going to be too many to add to your database. Obviously, that's overwhelming. So you definitely don't want to start with that. You need to narrow that down by some aspect. So I think size is a great one to do that. So we're going to go to the advanced search again. We're going to do a minimum company size of 250. So it's going to put us some of the bigger organizations out there. Madame Tussauds, Metropolitan Museum of Art. So let's pick on this one just as an example here. So there's information that you can glean about the company here, from the size and the amount of money that they're making. You can see jobs that they've posted. I don't know where CareerShift pulls their jobs from, so I don't know how current there are, but certainly finding any jobs is a great way to sort of gather that information too, but you want to double check on their website, on LinkedIn and other places that are out there. Probably the most exciting tool is the company contacts tool, and it's exciting for primarily one reason, and that is it gives you email addresses for people. Now, LinkedIn never gives you email addresses. It hates giving you email addresses. You only get an email address on LinkedIn from a first-degree connection, someone that you've actively connected with. All of these email addresses that are here are readily available to you. Doesn't mean that you should immediately start emailing these people, because you need to do a little bit of work first to position yourself on that, but that's a really great way of breaking it down. Now, just like on LinkedIn, I can narrow this down by school, right? So I can do a search for University of Pennsylvania and see if there are, of all these people here, any Penn connections. They're not always Penn students or alumni. Sometimes they are people who've worked at Penn who now work here. So it's a bit of a mix. But as I scroll through this, I can begin to see if there's anyone that stands out. A creator here, Penn PhD student who graduated in 1983. You can look through, you can expand their details, looks like I already have, and you can look through and see what CareerShift has pulled from the internet about this person, right? Articles that they've written, things that have been written about them, all sorts of background information that might be helpful if you're doing sort of networking or want to do outreach to this person to know what their background is. It's kind of creepy, yes, I don't know where it comes from, but it's just, scraping the web from what's out there. Really helpful when you're trying to gather information about a person or about their experience, if you're doing some of the network out, some of that networking prep that you might want to be doing. Again, that email is right there if you want to do that. Certainly we could take Diana and make sure that they are actually based in their role. So again, I don't know how CareerShift updates some information. Probably LinkedIn is going to be the most up-to-date thing, but here is Diana right now, still at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, right? So you can confirm that as you're playing around with the CareerShift experience. So another great tool to use. I'm going to do one more search just to illustrate this. So I'm going to go back to companies again. I'm going to go to search. Industry I'm going to use this time is a STEM one. We'll do pharma. It's going to be here. In this case, I'm going to focus in my advanced search on the big Fortune 100 and 500 companies, those that are the Fortune magazine are deemed are the biggest, most powerful companies in the world, or whatever criteria that they use. So when I do this search, it's going to be a small number of organizations that match that. So you can see some of the big organizations, Bristol and Merck and Gilead Sciences here. So I'll click on them. Again, you can see that annual revenue. That is outstanding, 24.7 billion. So the company contacts, a great resource to take a look at here. So there's over 5,000 contacts here. Sometimes you won't find an email address written, but usually you can figure it out by looking at everyone else's email code, right? Sabrina.barbic@gilead.com, first name, last name, first name, last name. So if I wanted to take a guess, I could make sure if I was sending an email to this person, I could blind carbon copy all of the different variations of their name and first name, last name, and one of those would work if I wanted to do that. But again, you don't want to be doing that necessarily as part of that, that early exploration. Another great advanced tool that you can use in this is actually a job title search, right? So if I want to do a job title search and look for recruiters, because that's always helpful to know, especially the email addresses of recruiters, I can do that. So I can see that there are 28 or so recruiters out there. I can scroll down, you can see all the emails. Sierra here, early careers and university relations recruiters. We can click on Sierra. No articles on the internet about this person, but we still have that email address there. Again, I could take this onto LinkedIn and confirm that Sierra was still in that role, because again, you don't want to be emailing people who obviously aren't there, and talent advisor at Gilead Sciences. So a great opportunity then to explore different people and to walk away with an email address if you really want to reach out to. But you can explore organizations, so job titles. I looked for recruiter, but you could have just done a job title of the role that you wanted to see what people there were there, or to see how many people had that type of job title. But the idea of being able to break down the industries and see all the organizations that fit within these industries by geographical area, that to me is the most helpful tool that CareerShift provides to begin with, because that really helps you build out your database of organizations that you might be interested in. When you advise reaching out by email to specific people, right? So this is going to be a good question. I'm going to cover some of this in the networking session tomorrow, but to a certain extent, once you know that that person has information from their own experiences that answers a question that you have, right? So you really need to have your question set first. You need to look at that person's profile on LinkedIn and say, what is it about their experience that can really help me answer some of the questions that I have? Because that way, when you reach out to that person through your connections, if possible, and say, hey, I'm reaching out to you because you share a background with me, you share a skill set, and I'd love to hear how you have done X. I'd love to hear about how you are using that right now. That would be so helpful to me as I'm doing my career exploration, right? Being able to articulate why that person is a good fit for you, not because they want to give you a job, because they don't know you yet. But if you can value them for who they are and what they've done, then they're more likely to respond to you. And that's a really great time to reach out, because when they know that they can be valuable to you because you've articulated that, they're going to feel better about that interaction. They're going to feel more positive about that interaction. Obviously, you don't want to reach out to someone and say, hey, I'd love to hear about what opportunities there are in the pharmaceutical industry, right? Because that doesn't really value their background, or they don't know you well enough to answer that question anyway. So starting off your networking when you have questions that someone can answer based on their own experience is a really great way of starting that process. So in summary then, LinkedIn helps you find alumni with similar experiences, similar overlap, but also helps you find people that you're connected with that you may not even know that you're connected with, right? Those secondary connections, people you don't yet know, but you know someone who also knows that person. That's going to really help you when it comes to the networking, start that process off to make those connections. CareerShift, a great way of gathering together organizations based on size, based on the amount of money that they're making, based on geographical location, and based on industry. And then a wonderful way of getting emails. So whenever you'll need an email from someone, and I do this all the time, I head over to CareerShift, I find the organization, I do a search for their name. Usually I can either find that email immediately, or I can find the email code, first initial, last name, whatever it is, and I can make a good guess at that. So do take advantage of these resources. Again, we pay for them so that you have access to them. So it's great when you do access them moving forward.